and now we're going to have the final block of today, which is the existential hope block. And so the existential hope block might be confusing at first because we have so much hard science and tech here. So why the hell focus on existential hope, and what even is it? Well, I think that if there's anything that's clear is that, there's a lot of negative paths on our horizon and plenty of really wonderful ones. And so at Foresight, we're really trying to accelerate technology, but accelerate them with a vision for positive futures. And so all of these, and the end goal, lead to futures of existential hope, or at least that's our goal. We have an existentialhope.com website where we're collecting positive futures, including world builds. We have an existential hope meme prize that will be starting next year. So who can make the most viral memes about positive futures enabled by tech? We have a bunch of world building, which Beatrice will talk to you a little bit more about. And finally, the Foresight Fellowships. Those are all different sector or different mechanisms with which we're trying to advance the general kind of like world building vision setting for positive futures. Now I'm super excited to hear from a few projects that are doing fantastic work in that space. And I think it's a really important space because if we don't know where we want to go, it's pretty unlikely that we'll ever end up there. And the first one up here that I want to welcome is Kenza Amlali and Antoine Herlin. If you want to get up here now, that'd be wonderful. They were the winners of our last world building session in the existential hope track, and you guys have produced really wonderful results there. So the world building contest is something that Beatrice will also share a little bit more about when she's up on stage to close it out. But we're basically trying to encourage people to think big about the long-term future and actually figure out, well, if we don't kill ourselves in the next 3 to 5 years, where is it that we actually want to go? And I think it's kind of important to think about. Of course, we want to de-pessimize. We don't just want to head towards utopia, but I think nevertheless, it hurts. It can't hurt to sometimes think about where it actually is that we want to go. So thank you so much, Antoine, for the fantastic work that you were doing in that session, and the stage is yours.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here. So I am Antoine. So my main occupation usually is to run my forecasting company, but as you understand, this is not the reason I'm here. I'm here because I participated in this world building competition and actually was part of the team that wrote the winning entry, so with my friend Kenza and Sofia. So what did we have to do? The prompt for the work we did was we were supposed to envision a very positive future for humanity where basically all major challenges were overcome by 2045. So quite ambitious. And so if you want to write an interesting story about this, an interesting scenario, we want to imagine at least one radical change that we can build upon. And for us, the radical change that we choose was what could happen if AI becomes exceptionally good at forecasting future outcomes. So we imagined that a company would invent a radical technology, a specialized AI that's really good at forecasting future events. So in the real world, such a company would have a huge incentive to use this for its own benefits, because basically if you're better than anyone else at forecasting future events, financial market becomes your money printing machine. But we imagined that the team behind this were really thinking that it should be public information, and so they wanted that all forecasts made by their technology to be public. So this laid the ground for the possibility of an implementation of futarchy. So I've talked a bit about futarchy with some of you. I know it's not very well known. So futarchy is the idea that we could use speculative prediction market as a way to advise for collective decisions. So it's like monarchy, but instead of the monarch, you have traders or prediction markets. So in practice, the premise for futarchy is that probably all the institutions we have for collective decision are not always that great at aggregating information about all best practice. But we know that prediction markets are extremely good at aggregating information. So that's the motivation. And so how it can work in practice. So imagine, for example, that let's say you want to increase GDP. Could be anything else than GDP that you can measure. But if you want to increase GDP, and you have policy A, policy B, you need to choose. What you can do is you set up two prediction markets. The first one is what will GDP be if we implement policy A, and the second is the same for policy B. And in the end, only one of the two will resolve, but you still get the information that what is the market thinking about each of the policy, and you can decide based on this. So in practice, we had to think about conditions under which we could implement Futurarchy with AI forecasting agents. So we imagined that a decentralized organization was built to implement those prediction markets, and so to generate public knowledge about the future. But we also imagined that this decentralized organization would be able to leverage this information for its own benefits, and so ultimately to make a profit. And I think that's very important because one issue we have with prediction markets is that it's a zero-sum game. It's the good forecasters that take the money of the bad forecaster. But if you have a profit somewhere, you can build an incentive if you redistribute a fraction of this. Another singular hypothesis we had in our scenario, it may be a bold assumption, but we had the idea that we could have a very fast adoption first in the developing world. I think it really can make sense for two reasons. The first reason is that, of course, there is probably much room for improvement, and so this kind of system are more useful in those kind of countries. It's a bit the question of to explain the development gap between low-income and high-income country is probably multidimensional, but institution and policy have to play some role. So I think that's useful. And another many more practical argument for this was it's very easier to build financial incentives for people to get involved in this kind of system in the developing world because if at the beginning of the process of implementing a Futurarchy, the profit is low, and let's say you have, I don't know, $50 per month revenue for being involved with the system. $50 is a significant incentive in Kenya, for example. It's not necessarily the same in developed countries. So this was the idea we had. Also, another feature of our scenario is that we wanted the adoption being from the bottom, from the people, rather than a top-down decision. So we imagine, for example, that in Kenya, we would have this kind of tool could be used at the local level for local decision. And then people would gain trust in this and would, in the end, trust more this kind of system than their own governments. And so we imagine, for example, that in the 2027 election in Kenya, some candidates would say, okay, I will use Futurarchy in my decision process. So this leads in our scenario to many positive impacts in healthcare policy and energy. I really don't have the time to talk about this. So if you're interested, please go read our scenario. It's on the Existential Hope website. And very briefly, because I have to end this, I wanted to say that I think world building is really a great way to think about the future. So I usually do forecasting rather than world building, but I think that's a great way because it really makes you challenge your assumption about the future. Because when you build the whole world in all its dimensions, you have to make sure that the assumptions you have are coherent with everything you're saying. So personally, to be honest, I used to be quite skeptical about Futurarchy, and I said, oh, it's a very interesting intellectual problem, so it can make a good scenario. Since then, I'm much more bullish on Futurarchy, and I'm not the only one. I don't know if people that are interested in this are kind of a revival of the concept and recent experimentation. It's linked to the development of AI forecaster, of course. It's linked to the fact that prediction markets have been performing quite well recently in the US election, so the people have gained trust. And also the baseline, the current, yeah, I'm done. The baseline, the current institution we have are perceived are not that good, so there's always room for improvement. So thank you so much, and I'm happy to take questions if you have.
Thank you. I was also nodding because I like what I hear. I think it's true. Prediction markets are having a real comeback, and it's about time. Questions, comments? Any predictions you want to venture? At a previous Vision Weekend, we had a prediction market running on Manifold, and then we viewed all the answers the week later, and the same for Metaculous 2 years before, so we do love them.
So there's something called performative feedback, where if the society is running or any policy is running based on future predictions, and that feedback is given to people who are making decisions, they start acting differently. Have you thought about that dimension? Like if society is extremely utilizing these predictions, then maybe performative feedback would also start happening at a larger scale.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting question. I think we've talked about this in some of the description of the world, especially regarding geopolitics. We had this idea that if we have public information about, for example, the consequences of conflict between nations, that is very readily available, it was disincentivize the decision by leaders to go into this kind of conflict. So that's an example, but I think we can think of many other examples here.